Good afternoon. Would you please turn to someone, either your right or your left, and say, Happy Anniversary? Yes, it's 50 years ago. No, I'm not going to ask who was here 50 years ago. I don't think there's anyone, is there? Okay. Would you please stand with me and join in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Once a year, we have a very special announcement, and it is our nominations report. Would you like to come give it?
Hi, good afternoon. I was asked last meeting to be on the nominating committee. That's a true challenge for me because we do have a lot of new people since I left. But with the help of Krista Minogue, and Sue Black, we were able to complete the roster. The WVGS 2002 nominating committee would like to put forth the following people for the board of directors for the 2022-23 year. When I call your name, could you please stand if you're here? Voting will take place by the WVGS members at the annual meeting next month, November 14th. Nominations from the floor will take place at that meeting. So for president, we'll have Lois Bird, Lois. First vice president, Stephanie Sparks. Second vice president, Marilyn Simlinus agreed to do a second term. Thank you. Recording secretary, Sue Black. Not sure she's here. Oh yeah, there. Treasurer will be Donna Scott and Jill Mitchell. Director of Education, Barbara Schroyer. Director of Fundraising, Peggy Morphew and Sally Pavia. Sally's over there. The Director of Technology, Jim Sanders. Well, we'll have to get on the search. Charlie will step in, won't you, Charlie? The Director of Membership Outreach is Pam LaFond. Director of Library Services, Chris Palmer. And Director of Collections, Della Jones. Thank you for all agreeing, and the vote will take place next month. Thank you.
That is probably the hardest job in the world, trying to twist someone's arm, but I saw her do it, and she does it well. Okay. The chairs have not come yet, but Stephanie has news, I hope.
The chairs were stuck in Washington, the state of Washington, and one of the reasons I bought these chairs is because they were made in the U.S. It turns out that in order to be called made in the U.S., some American has to touch it at some point, and so they came from China, and they were stuck on a boat for a long time, and then they took a long time to get onto a container. They're now on their way they're now in South Carolina, and where they can be. That's where the church plaza's factory is, and that. So whatever the final steps is that they have to do, but we paid the money. We paid the second half of the money last Thursday, and it's officially 14 to 20 business days. And that sometime in that next 14 to 20 business days, I will get a phone call, and the phone call will say, in the next 24 hours, the truck is going to show up. So all of you, thank you, all of you who volunteered to help with the unloading. That's our biggest issue. And you'll get the same notice I get. As soon as I hang up the phone, I'll send out a notice to the chair delivery team. And then as many of you can show up as possible would be great. We'll make it easier for everybody. And that we have a couple of hours to get them off the truck, and then we just have to get them into the library. So it's not a big deal, except it's the only thing the truck drivers do is open the back gate, and that's the end of it. We have to do the rest. And they come in packages of 12. So we have to break up the packages and hand them down from the back of the truck and get them in the library. So it's easy and not easy. But that's what we currently know. I'm also going to go on beyond the truck picture. I'm going to have to say that there was a lost set of slides that were supposed to come next. Facebook, all of you know Facebook. I'm sure lots of you use it, and some of you don't, and there's a range of opinions about it and that, but it's a platform that we have and use and need to use more effectively. Barb Schroyer very competently runs a private Facebook group, and that which is you have to ask to join, and generally it's members that join, and it's intended to be a conversational, a discussion group, whatever, and that. Most companies also would have a standard Facebook page as well, which is our way of communicating all of the formal stuff that we do. And if you did a search of Facebook groups, WVGS would not show up. If you did a search of Facebook groups specifically looking for WVGS, you would find a 2014 page with genealogy spelled wrong. So we thought it was important to upgrade it. But a static front page doesn't help much. People expect these days to be able to get a question answered, to look and see what the most current events are, all of that stuff. Just like a newspaper 100 years ago, or our website or whatever, and that Facebook needs to have somebody monitoring it, and that on a regular basis. There are also people called trolls who will, post stuff or will try to post stuff, or will ask questions and that are inappropriate content, and we have to be watchful for that. So the purpose of these two slides was to tell you that, and to ask if someone would be willing to act as what they call an administrator for the commercial page for WVGS. It does mean, and I think it would be great if it was two people in that, because it really does need to be checked every day just to make sure there's no inappropriate content, that people have asked questions, the answers are going to come forth either because you can give them or because you can send it off to somebody who can answer them, and that whatever. And that we are an all-volunteer organization, and that set of volunteers is almost all in this room. And it's not and it's on our backs. I think everybody who's a volunteer now is doing more than one job. So if we can start to regroup and get some more volunteers, it would be very good. And this is one of the first ones I think we need. It's a very good way for those people who are active users of Facebook to find out that we're here, that we have a library, that we're here in Arizona, that we're active. So yes. Yes. Fine. Thank you. All right, thank you. All right, now I'm coming up again with my next volunteer request.
Thank you. There's nothing like saying, I will do it. Okay, I mentioned that it was our 50th anniversary, and there's all sorts of things going on. Charlie's somewhat shy, so I'm going to do the narrating, and he's going to do the demonstrating. There's something called piggies. Charlie, where's the piggies? Pick up your piggies, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, how about if we match that before the end of the day? Yeah. Wow. There's nothing like volunteers that will open their billfolds and their checkbooks. We also have tickets available yet for the dinner on the 29th. There's a hand going back there at the table. She's just waiting for you to come get them. So don't leave without your ticket. The speaker, I won't tell you who it is, but I'll tell you it is a very interesting and entertaining speaker. So don't miss it. It's at, help me, church on Coggins Drive, not just kind of back of this. So don't miss that one. Okay, and there's a shopping list up there for you to do during the break time. Don't forget to buy your tickets. I don't think we have used books there today, but I would suggest that if you're going to buy the library, that you look at the books they have for sale. The other day I was in just looking at them, and I found one that was about that thick and about a ton of weight to carry home. But when I got home, I found a lost great aunt that I had never been able to put anything to. And here in little fine print was her information. So don't ever give up by looking at books. Let's see, where do we go from there? I'm not reading very well. There are new opportunities to do research, and there's going to be a research afternoon on Saturdays from 12 to 3. Okay? That sounds like fun. And Barb, you got any more information on classes and things for us?
Yes, we kind of had a bloop on the slides. So we were supposed to have slides up. The upcoming classes are basic writing for genealogy with Kathy Gallagher instructing that, novice genealogy, which is offered monthly by Barb Stenberg, DNA painter workshop, which I teach, and how to publish your genealogy stories with Bonnie Bozart. And do come to our research afternoon. We're going to have several people that can help you, give you some hints on your research, answer your questions. Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a short break because we have some really big experts to speak to you this afternoon. They know all the answers. Somebody's waving at me, I forgot something. In case you didn't hear, she needs aids. Go volunteer. And Barb.
If you are interested in getting information on the trip to Salt Lake in March,
Now, any more last minutes? All right, go buy those tickets from the gals at the desk, put money in the piggy, and get acquainted with each other. And we'll be back in about 5 minutes.
Okay, so it's off when I go like this.
All right, I think you've all had a chance to fill those piggies. Let's get on with the interesting part of the day. I did want to call attention to these very special dates that are on the screen right now. Of course, the anniversary we've mentioned before, and then there is the annual seminar coming up in February. You'll hear more about it next month, but just circle the calendar right now. And then the Salt Lake City trip. Pack your bags, get your information that you need, because we're all going to Salt Lake City, aren't we? Okay. Barb, would you like to introduce the program, please?
Yes, the program today is all of the people that are up here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 former presidents. We have one who was going to come, Peggy Morphew, but she just returned from a trip and she's worn out from her trip. So we'll let her rest. And because she's going to be busy doing all the fundraising activities and the dinner later this month and a whole lot of other stuff. Just the few things that Charlie doesn't do. So let me introduce the former presidents that we have right now. You know, actually, before I do, could I have everyone in the room, other than people here who have to be relaxed for this, everyone else in the room who has ever served on the WVGS board in the history of the society stand up. And we have a former, another former president back here. She's not participating in our panel, but we will say hi to her, Ethel Sanders. She served as president in 1998.
Oh,
Hi.
hi there, everyone.
You want to say anything else?
Just that I'm glad that I see so many people here and that the society is continuing.
Thank you, Ethel. Okay, I'm going to start with the furthest back, and we don't have anybody that goes back 50 years, back to the ancient time of, oh my goodness, it's before my daughter, who's the youngest member here, was even born. Okay, we have Jean White. She was president in 1997. I've known Jean for about 20 years. So it's 1997, it says on the panel. Okay. She was a longtime WVGS class instructor. The education committee is still working to get all those classes that she taught covered by somebody and back on our agenda. She was editor of what is now called the Desert Tracker. I believe it was called the Sun City Genealogist or something in those days. She's done research in many areas, and she named tons of them for me, but we'll just say the Midwest areas, Indiana, Ohio, some of the other Midwest states, Canada, Britain. She's still researching. I remember about 15 years ago, she said she was kind of slowing down on research. I don't think it's happened. She's written a number of books on her family, along with some pamphlets. I saw some listed on cemetery readings and so forth, and other how-to pamphlets. You will find some of those in our library, and there are also some that she's that are at the Salt Lake City Library, right? Okay. Peggy Morphew, who isn't here, also served as library administrator later, and she researches Italy and Ireland and serves as facilitator currently for the Italian SIG. Okay, next up, we have Kathy Gallagher, who served in 2012 and 2013. So I think everybody knows Kathy. And then she came back. She loved being president so much that when Lou disappeared to Alaska to play grandma, she came back in as president in 2019. She's also a WVGS class instructor. She facilitates the Writing Your Family History SIG. She's a former SIGS coordinator and a few other things. Her current and past research interests include Maine, Massachusetts, Newfoundland, Ontario, Italy, and the British Isles, among other places. I think she just found somebody in Poland or something. Somewhere. Okay. And she was followed sometime after her first term and before her second term by Irma Hardin, who is right here. Put your hand up, Irma. Put your hand up, just in case there's anybody that doesn't recognize you. She became interested in genealogy when her sister had twins, which was back, I believe, in the late 1960s. And she wanted to know if twins ran in her family, and by 2 or 3 years later, she had started her research. Much of her research is in Midwestern states, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and she also researches Ireland, which brings us to an interesting point. Kathy Gallagher, that we just introduced, Kathy's married name is Gallagher, and guess what Irma's maiden surname is? It's Gallagher. And we have Jean White, whose married name is White. And Kathy's maiden surname is White. Oh my goodness. And after Kathy, or before Kathy, there's this woman that took off to Alaska because she just likes cold weather. Lou McLean, she was president in 2018. Prior to that, she was the surname person. I'm not sure what the title was for that, and did some other things. You started the surname database. And I remember you did a class, or a class, I don't know if it was a paid class or just an informal one, on teaching people how to use the computers and how to find programs and so forth on our the computers that we have. She facilitated the adoption SIG. Sometimes it was a SIG, sometimes it was one-to-one, just helping people out. Sometimes adoptees don't necessarily want to be talking around 1 billion people, so that's there. And I hope you're going to do that again. We'll think about that. Now that she's back, she researches, she has ancestry in Italy, the Netherlands, Germany, French Canadian, and German ancestry, if I didn't mention that. And she's, of course, currently our nomination committee chair. Oh, and then there's Stephanie Sparks. Stephanie liked being on the board so much that after 2 years as president, she came back in as first vice president. Yes, yes. And she also does our building management. Just a little small task. Okay. She's going to be co-teaching with Connie Sheets a virtual class in genealogy basics next month. It should be very good. It's going to be virtual. 7 of her 8 great-grandparents, if I understand right, came here from Norway. No, they had no Whites and Gallaghers. No. And in addition, I believe you've also researched your husband's ancestors, and that took you from Maryland and other places through several U.S. states. Okay.
I joined WVGS because it had a full run of a periodical called the Sparks Quarterly.
Okay. Is there anything urgent I need to add to that? Liz, you're always organized, so we need to talk for about 50 minutes up here. Would you give me a sign when 50 minutes about is up?
Oh, yes, not 5-0. No.
When 50 minutes, when it's just not quite an hour. So we have about 5 minutes left for questions. The yellow sheets that I passed out, if you have a question, please write it there. We're not going to do questions by people raising their hand. We're going to have the questions. They're going to be, we're going to collect them with my daughter, who's back there in the green t-shirt, and also Marilyn Simlinus, who's back there with her hand up. So write them out. Try to keep them on topic, or we won't use them. Sorry. Okay. I want to know from the past presidents, when did you join WVGS? And I want everybody in the audience to also be thinking this themselves. When did you join WVGS? And why have you continued to be a member of WVGS? Now, everybody up here, along with a lot of people in the room, have given an immense amount of time to the society, and these people have given a lot of time, both as president and in other volunteer capacities. I want to know how this has helped you personally, and how you see it helping other members of the society.
I joined in 2002 when we moved to Sun City. And one of the reasons that I joined was for classes by Jean White, which are tremendous. It was really a sad day when she quit teaching, but I still have her books that I go and refer to from time to time. And the other thing is the speakers. There was a lot of classes, or a lot of speakers that gave how-to information and a lot of handouts at that time. So that's why I joined.
I joined in 2009 when I moved to Buckeye from New Mexico. And I came for the monthly meetings because there was good speakers who I agreed provided good information. Somebody suggested I volunteer as an aide, so that's the starter point for many of us, I think, volunteering, and that is to be an aide. And then Jean got me onto the CDC, Collection Development Committee, and then one day Kathy Gallagher tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Could I talk to you for just a minute?" That's how I got to be president. So, I came for the speakers. I stayed for the Sparks Quarterly, and for all of you people. At the end of the day, this is all about the people that do this together, and how much. It is a lot of work involved, but it's work with people who, first of all, are not bored with your family stories. They don't mind. They're going to share theirs in the next 5 minutes too. So that works out great. And but it's the people really that makes me stay.
My husband and I joined in 2007, and we weren't really sure what we were doing. Bob had been doing genealogy forever, and I had been doing it for some time. It's been over 20 years now. And I think the bottom line why we've stayed, despite the fact that so many of us do so much for the society, is that for friendships. I made friends like Bunky, better known as Michelle, Barb, Jody, and there's so many others that we have friends and we have things in common. The love of family history, travel, and as Stephanie said, sharing the stories, especially in the Desert Tracker. So we read a lot of good things. So why we've stayed, we're hooked. I guess that's the word. You can't say the word no. Speaking of that, I wanted to, when I was looking back at the annual reports I did in 2012, 2013, we had 740 members back in 2012. And I counted, there were 33% of our members were volunteers. That's a lot. And as I think it was Lois who said, many of us, or many of them, do 1 or 2, 3, 4 things. We just don't run education or teach a class or an aide. So if you're not volunteering, look around and say, hey, if my friend can do it, why don't I volunteer? Be a library aide. You get to know the library and what's in it, the books, the maps. Thank goodness for Sue Black, showed me some books on Prussia. I just learned where my second great-grandfather lived in Prussia. So there's so many good things and reasons to volunteer. I think that's one of the reasons we've stayed. So that's my comment.
I joined in 1993. I moved to Phoenix in 1990, and I had been doing genealogy for a number of years before that, in Indiana and in Kansas. And let's see. I got here, I found out about the society through their seminar. It was posted in a library, and I called the number on there, and we chatted for, I think, an hour and a half or so. Just because I was genealogy starved by then. I also picked up the newspaper about that time, and the headline was, Genealogy Society Kicked Out of Library. And that was when we had our books at the Sun City West Library, and they decided they needed the room, and out you go. And they had to shut down, so I couldn't do any research. They ended up over on 113th Avenue in a very small little cubicle, let us say, 4 rooms. If I was teaching and somebody came to the door, I had to go back and out through 3 different rooms to get to the front door. I couldn't use my overhead projector or the screen because there was no place to put them. And if you wanted to research and you needed a book off the shelf, you had to ask the person that was sitting in front of that shelf to please duck so you could get the book. It was that tight. Unfortunately, at that place, we found termites, which termites and books do not mix. So we needed to move very quickly. And it was during my presidency that we moved to California Avenue and had lots and lots of room there. And we were there for a number of years. Let's see, I've lost track now. Huh? Oh, I think it was more than 5, but.
2000, 2000, 2001.
Anyway, when we moved into there, because before that we had been using anything that came out of attics, people's homes. We did not buy anything. So we made the big splurge when we moved to California Avenue, and we bought 20 new blue chairs.
40 years later,
And they came from Forerunner of Costco, and they certainly have served their purpose. I guess that's about it.
It's never just about it with Jean. Yes, I know.
I want to make an announcement. Never give up your research. I just found my one German ancestor in Germany. She came at age 4 with her parents and grandmother and other relatives, I believe, were on the ship too. And they came down with a COVID-like virus that swept out the family, and only Anna was left alive. And she was raised by some distant relatives. But I found where they came from in Germany. Her name was Anna Mueller, so you can imagine my problem there.
When was this? What year? Did she?
What years they come?
Yeah.
I think 1834.
I joined the library in 2005 when my husband and I both retired, and we moved. We were snowbirds for 17 years from Alaska. And the first thing I did when we got settled is I went to the Yellow Pages and I looked up genealogy because I was just starting to get a little bit interested. I was doing my husband's genealogy a little bit before anybody's because he has a very large family. A lot of people who are still alive could tell stories. When I found the library, I walked in, and the first thing I noticed on the wall was the letters that said surnames. So I said, I just hit pay dirt. I hit the biggest gold pot right now because I can go to any one of those books and find out all about my family and all about my husband's. And I found out quite soon that that's not what it was about. So like others, I started as an aide. I wanted to get involved in the library and learn as much as I could. So Jean, of course, was still teaching classes. I took all of Jean's classes. The seminars I attended, I went on the trips to Salt Lake City. The SIGs, I didn't even know what SIG meant, but I could see that they had an Italian one, and my adopted mother was Italian. So I started doing the SIGs. And it was Jean who told me, I asked her something about adoption, and because the current president at that time, who's since passed, was adopted. And I says, well, how come people don't, have a SIG about adoption? And she said, because nobody's interested in doing it, why don't you start one? And so I said, okay, I'll start a SIG on adoption. I had no clue. All I had was my own story. And so I was able to assist others just by telling them my story and how I could find my biological mother. And that's about when 2005 came around. That's when I found my biological mother, and 3 siblings. The reason I've been at the library and stayed at the library, even when we did have to snowbird and we spent 2.5, 3 years in Tucson, was because, like others have said, it's the friendships. I decided in my retirement that this was a life that I liked. I was raised a single, only child, and so having lots of girlfriends and people that had the same type of thing in common with me, meaning research, ancestry, that type of thing. So it was just last summer in July when I discovered through DNA and multiple DNA tests that some of the stories I was told didn't prove to be true, and so I've spent a lot of time since July working on my biology side. I'm also moving back because I told my husband in July, now that our granddaughter's in school all week, I only see her on Sundays, so why can't I see her in Sun City West or wherever we decide to locate? And he said, fine with me. I mean, he just watches sports on TV and plays golf occasionally, so he can do it here. So that's why I'm moving back. But it's because of the people and what I've learned from them. And people like Jean, Peggy, Sally. I've sat with Sally on Sundays after doing digitizing, and we have shared personal stories. It's just like I said, it's friendships and having something in common. And what I have, I am happy to share, as I know you are, because everyone loves to tell their story.
Thank you all. And I'm glad you all brought the person, the way that we like interacting with other genealogists. And sometimes we're so busy telling them how many books we have and how many this we have and how many that we have, but we also have people who are willing to share their stories and listen to our stories. Okay, 50 years ago, when none of us had joined WVGS yet, in 1972, please. 1972, some of us had started doing genealogy a little bit. I was dabbling in it slightly. Slightly is a good word. And some of you were doing it seriously. So how many people here, could I see a show of hands, that were doing at least a little bit of genealogy back 50 years ago? Okay. This was when WVGS, or I believe it was then known as the Sun City Genealogical Society, it's when it was founded. So let's think about 50 years ago. I just read that there were 36 people that started the society, and I can tell you none of those people, without even checking on them, had a personal computer in their house. If anyone had come to one of their meetings and started using words like internet, email, digital records, virtual meetings, Facebook, genealogy software programs, or any of a number of other things, they would have been totally confused. And if you came in there and you mentioned DNA for genealogy, they'd send you out to somebody talking about biology, if they even knew what DNA was. So a lot has changed, and I believe that WVGS over the years, in order to keep people's interests and so forth, and to meet the needs of the ongoing needs of people, has had to make some changes, some adjustments. Some people are more ready for some technology than others are as it comes along. When genealogy software programs came into being, they started rudimentarily back in the mid-1980s, and then we really got them in the mid-late 90s. but some people liked them, some people didn't. When DNA was first used, if you remember the old message boards on RootsWeb, if it was a surname message board and you came in and asked about your Y-DNA, you were told firmly you needed to go over to a different message board because they weren't going to talk about DNA. So I just want to know, did you have, Irma, you were, we're going to start with the oldest one here. Back in 1997,
Well, there's one thing that you left out that really changed genealogy, and that was when I started at about 1995, the copy machine. Yes, you're going to have to write it out by hand. Okay, now, what do you want to know about?
Well, we've had to make some adjustments over the years. We've changed how we do our research.
That's right.
Researching the same
And they're still changing it.
lots of changes, and the changes come faster and faster.
I can't keep up with them. Yeah, well, I still have not done my DNA. That's why I was wondering. No. I'm an only child. I know who the ancestors are. I didn't see much need for it.
When I started doing genealogy, the only thing available was the state library, the library in Mesa, and in order to get forms, I went to the LDS store, and you had to buy the forms, and you either wrote them out in pencil or you figured out how to do it on a typewriter, and then used a copy machine like you said. But my favorite story is, and I know this was right after I started my husband's side, I was in Illinois, in Mattoon, Illinois, and I went in and I said, I'd like to know about the Hardin side of the family. And she said, well, what would you like to know? And I said, well, do you have anything on the death certificate or anything like that? She said, oh, yes, ma'am. She said, they're down in the basement. Would you like to see them? And I said, of course. So she said, well, it's in this room. And she took me in the room. I went down a ladder that was like this, scared me to death, got down there. She turned the lights on. And I actually had in my hand the whole estate file of his grandfather and his mother, or his grandmother and his great-grandfather. I could have walked out with them, and they would never have known the difference, because I came back up and she said, is that all you wanted? And I said, yes, ma'am. And I left.
Oh, well, when I came into the library, of course, there were computers, but it doesn't matter if you were working on a computer or not. I was infatuated with Ancestry.com, and I was so naive. And I put my stuff in, my data, but then I ended up spending an entire summer on a river in Alaska being the ancestry sheriff, because everything that I was working towards seemed to have other people's input, or the hints were incorrect because we had children born after parents and all kinds of stuff. And when I found all my mother's pictures, photographs that I had put on when she was a little baby, she was Italian, on somebody's website that I had no clue about, I wrote to these people. I said, how are you related to such and such? Who are you in all of this family? And I'd get answers. Once in a while I'd get answers and say, well, I'm 9th cousin removed from that woman's husband. That was my dad, you know. I said, excuse me, you have to erase all the stuff you've put on because it's not you. That's what I meant about being naive about these computer things. So I had everything public. So I went back and learned how to make everything private until I knew everything was precise and correct. And from that point, because I was a Macintosh user and the library didn't even know what Macintoshes were, excuse me, Fred, I was buying all kinds of data work programs and installing them on my computer. And I was with Tribal Pages, which was free, and Family Search, and Roots Magic and Family Tree Maker for Macintoshes finally, you know, but all of this plus my ancestry, plus FamilySearch.org. And I'd complain about these things because I was a Macintosh user. And one of the things I decided to do was be the only thorn amongst roses. So I went to the CEC committee meetings and I asked them about their language that they use, computer language, I mean. And because they all spoke computerese, but they didn't think about people that were Macintosh users. You see what I'm saying? So the computer thing was not only a good thing for me, but it was also a huge frustration because it put you in contact with the whole rest of the world if you were on Ancestry. And then you found out, oh my God, you know, they're not only copying your stuff, but this person's name was on every photograph that I had posted. That really infuriated me. And Jean, I mean, even 5 years ago, Jean said, I'm getting out of Family Search, I'm going to Roots Magic. Aren't you on Roots Magic? Why don't you and I work together and figure out this Roots Magic thing? And I said, okay, we would. And now she says she's going back to Family Search. And Family Search is also a frustration. So she does both. And I mean, kudos to you, because I don't know how you can keep from getting so frustrated about all the different programs. But they're in our life, and they've made our life easier to a great degree. And I would encourage anyone, if you don't know everything that's on those computers in the library's lab, you need to spend at least an hour and a half going through every single folder on those computers, because you're missing a great opportunity of things that are there to help you. Anyway, I don't know how I got off on that.
Can I speak? I wanted to say regarding the computer situation, I think we really need to thank Roger Hanneman and Ed Crabb and Jim Sanders and the rest of the CEC, Computer Equipment Committee. I said that right? Jeez, it's been a while. Because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have the, and I was not here when another father and son donated the computers and made the desks. Is that right, Jean? In the computer lab, maybe, and I can't remember, but there's a plaque. Ed, who are the people who, there's a plaque in the computer room, the father and son who donated or made those desks. So there's a lot of personal, maybe Liz would remember, I don't know. But they've done so much, and we used to have only Ancestry in the computer lab, but now it's remote because of COVID. And so, go ahead, Liz. Oh, Wickenkamp. Floyd and Richard Wickenkamp, father and son, who donated so much. So you got to thank these people who are in the CEC for everything they do to help us. The other sad thing, I will say, being a library aide again, not everybody comes to the library. Take advantage of it. There's so much there, not only on the computers, but on the shelves. And I know that Sandy Enke's been doing a lot of work digitizing and moving books around, and gets confusing, Sandy. But she's done a lot of work too, so don't forget to use the library. And speaking of Roots Web, one quick thing. 20 years ago, remember when we used to go to Roots Web and there'd be little messages, and someone said, oh yeah, my great-grandparents were Giovanni Lanciolotti and Anna Maria Mortimer. And I thought, wait, that can't be true. They're my great-grandparents. And like, it's supposed to be a joke. You think you have ownership of certain people. But so back then, when we didn't have Facebook, I sent a letter, and she listed where she was. The email wasn't working. I used something called anywho.com, found all the people named Humphreys in Aberdeen, Scotland, sent them letters by snail mail. If you know of anybody named Maria Humphreys, let me know. I'm trying to find her. Well, she emailed me. I found her. We met a couple years later in Scotland. I'm going to see her again. And so you never know who you're going to find online. And so you got to be thankful and grateful that people do put things up to share information with you. So, all right, I'll stop. We can all gab.
Talking about technology, back in late 2019, we had a new president. Her name was Stephanie Sparks, and she really started out great. She came to SIGs because she didn't know about some of them. She had a whole list of things that she wanted to be, and she had a whole bunch of plans. Well, come February and March, just as she's starting in, this little thing called COVID showed up from China. And Stephanie had to make a lot of changes, and she had to introduce us to the use of virtual meetings and so forth in order to function.
Under normal circumstances, I would have been in 18 of these meetings over a 2-year term. I was in 3. And the rest of the time, we were either shut down or we were doing them virtually. So there's a lot of benefit. My perspective is there was a lot of benefit to what we did. We suddenly had access to speakers that we would never have been able to bring to this venue, and that was great. It was also hugely frustrating to figure out how to have a board meeting and get minutes done when I first started, I would get like 16 emails, and that each one of them replying all to the other 15 people on the board or whatever the number was, and all that. And it was just, and I'd been an Outlook email person for 30 years, and now I was suddenly having to do Gmail. And so yeah, it was exciting. Part of it was exciting, but mostly it was just frustrating, and it's also frustrating to me right now that we have dropped it all and gone back to the way we were before. And I think that there's benefits that we will lose if we don't do both going forward. And so I think but yes, I was all about electronics. So thank you.
Okay, and where in the world is Lois? Okay, I'm going to go pick on Lois for a minute because Lois was telling somebody a story the other day. She was talking about her home county, and I believe you were talking about something about the library that was there, and they just had a little one room. You want to tell us about it, and then she'll tell you what it is, but don't tell them what it is right now.
All right, when I started back in 1970, I went to this library because someone had said that's where you do genealogy. And I asked for I went in the library, it was a library, and I went in and asked where the genealogy was, and the lady said, upstairs, up the escalator. So I rode up the escalator and I looked, and there were 3 little rooms. The room was probably like this corner, thereabouts. And it was a desk with a little lady on it, and one very small table, and 2 chairs, and a card catalog. Okay? And the lady was wonderful helping me, and so she said, you go to the card catalog and you look up your surname, and then you can find the material we have on it. And I'm looking around wondering where it is. But anyway, I found 2, and she said, now you write it down on this little slip of paper, the name of the book and the number. Being a librarian, I knew that was the Dewey Decimal number, but anyway. And she said, then I'll take it, but you can only do 2. You can't hold a lot of them, you just do 2. So I gave her the slip, and this young man came in from somewhere, I don't know where, took the 2 slips and disappeared. And pretty soon, here he came back with 2 books, put them down on my desk, and I found them, got what I wanted out of them, and I went back to the card catalog, and I found a couple more, okay? This went on for a year that I went about once a week to this library. Then I moved with General Motors, moved us around, and we went to Michigan. And then I went back several years later, and this little one room became a half a city block on the second floor. Now, some of you have been there because we went there 2 or 3 years ago. It's called the Fort Wayne's Reynolds Genealogical Collection. The point of that being, our little library, a very small room, could someday be like the Fort Wayne Library. And if anybody has a dream, that's mine, and I'd love to share it with you.
Yes. Gives us more perspective on. I'm still on. Okay. Did we have anybody that had questions written down? So if you have those questions, if you would take them to Marilyn or. It's a questionless group. Do we have any other? I mean, you can.
They don't know what they don't know. That's right. You don't know what you don't know.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure on this one. Do we have any? I'll wait. This is a person that's looking for somebody and they can't find his family and they wonder if he's adopted. Anybody want to tell them what you might do? Talk to Lou.
If you have an adoption, depends on how far out in your family they are. You would go to the county where if you know where the person was born, if you have a birth date where they were born or the name of their parents, you can write to the Department of Vital Statistics for that county, and you can request any information they might have in their files. The first thing you should do is research whether or not the state has open adoption records. Many of them do, many of them do not. But that doesn't mean you can't get the records. If you got money, it talks. But I didn't have money, but I did write to the Department of Vital Statistics in Oregon, and I didn't know that they had open adoption records since 1996. And when I wrote in 2005, I said, this is my name, this is my parents' name, this is the hospital I was born in, these are the dates. What do you have? Because I was looking for medical information. I was not looking for people. And I got a form back based on my birth date. They said, we don't have any information on your medical, but we do have this. And if you are looking for someone in a state with open records, if you're lucky, those biological people, mostly it would be the mother, would have filled out a form and said, yes, I want to be contacted, or no, I do not. And that's how I found my biological mother, because she signed it. She gave her current address at the time in 1996 and a phone number. But I was looking in 2005. But if you have people that you feel are adopted, DNA is going to be your biggest answer now, and not just one DNA test, but every company that gives a DNA test to the general public, take it, because not everybody who does DNA tests is going to stay with Ancestry, let's say, or 23andMe. Younger generations are doing it to find out their heritage. I found out I have multiple nephews in their 40s. They don't care about Ancestry, they just want to know their ethnicity, but you're going to find the connection that way. Also, if there's any relatives, and be prepared, they don't like to talk about that. But if you have relatives that are still alive, an aunt, an uncle, who could give you information. But writing to the Department of Vital Statistics with a birth date, a name of the adopted parents, even church archives, like a lot of the churches, Catholic Social Services is a separate entity, private adoption groups, you can write to those people. If they have records, most churches will keep records of baptisms, of course, and you can start finding the thread that way. There's more information, but that's kind of just how you would start.
Okay, is there anything any of the former presidents would want to add I do have one question here. When you became president, there are just so many different aspects to WVGS. When you became president, was there something you didn't think you really needed to know about and didn't know you needed to know about this? Or was there maybe something that you knew was part of WVGS, but you were sure that there was someone that totally took care of that for you? Stephanie is laughing.
No, I can't answer that.
I'd been on the board before, so I kind of knew what to expect.
Well, I had not only not been on the board before, and that I was on the nominating committee, and after I'd figured out how to sell the presidency job as being easy and anybody could do it and you didn't need anything special, but people kept saying no, I finally said, oh well, maybe I can do this. Kathy put together a huge binder. She left me lots of material, and that most of it took me 2 years to absorb. But her issues for her 2 years were different than the issues that I had for 2 years. So it's hard, I don't think you could ever talk anybody into longer than a 2-year term, and that, but it makes it difficult because we change so often on that, so.
I was laughing.
Oh.
Kathy did 3 years.
3 years.
Yes.
But back then,
You need a mic.
not really good. Okay. Back then, I think when the society started, I think the terms for the board members were just 1 year. Is that right, Jean? Yeah. And then at some point, the bylaws changed and it became 2. So by the time I came on board, it was 2 years per term. Some people left in the middle of their term. We pick on Lou because we like her, but go ahead. You're gonna hit me.
Talking about bylaws, policies and procedures are in place, but when I came on, I was asking for job description, and everybody looked at me like, what? You know, I mean, they existed somewhere, and they had been worked on, but I didn't realize that, you know, those things need to be updated, as well as the bylaws. So because of my, I guess you could say, curiosity and antagonistic behavior towards some of the committees, I thought we need to find out what these people do and communicate it to the other committees. Because we all know when we say CEC, okay, that has to do with all the equipment. And CDC, which okay, that has to do with collections. But there's job descriptions for every position on the board as well as committee chairs. And so Irma started, we got new bylaw, not just bylaw committee, but policies and procedures. And I'm not kidding, it took over 3 years to finalize the policies and procedures and get them on the web, thank you, Ed.
Yeah, that was 2019.
Because you can't write up a job description for the chair of the fundraising committee. The person who has worked that position needs to write that up. And you have to put those forms out in a uniform way so everybody has the same opportunity to write down what they did. And I will admit, Roger Hanneman from the CEC took the longest. His job descriptions for every person on his committee was 13 pages long. And we tried to get him to, could you be a little bit more concise here? Could you get it down a little bit? Because people, you don't want to sign up for something if you don't know what you're signing up for. And so we finally got them once Irma left, and then I came in behind Irma. And then we had several illnesses. We had a person pass away. Then Kathy came in. We had to get it fixed. If it wasn't for CEC, you can go on there and read this stuff now. We never could before. I didn't know what I was signing up for. I didn't volunteer to be a president. Somebody asked me, and they said, oh, like Stephanie, oh, that's easy. That's the easiest position there is. Delegate, delegate, delegate. Oh, yeah, sure. But when you delegate and they don't show up, guess who has to be there?
Yeah, but you're not supposed to tell people this when you're on the nominating committee and you're the chairman of it because you.
Well, With me, the biggest surprise I got was finding out how many books we got from the state library. That was a blessing and a disaster in disguise. And Kathy, I can't even remember her last name. She and I were down there pricing those books for months, it seemed like. And then we had. Pardon? Kathy, pardon? No. But we priced them all out. They had 3 or 4 sales, and the sales were not as successful as we wanted. And we finally ended up donating to the Visiting Nurses Association because we were just tired of books piled everywhere. But if someone told me that we were going to take that many books, and bless Arlene Sampson's heart, she was the one that got all the books for us, and we did add a lot to the library. We added a lot of second copies that were in better condition than ours were. So it was a blessing, but boy, it was a fiasco to us.
I forgot to mention Ada Sullivan, who is also a former president and is enjoying a river cruise in Europe right now. Any other?
I just want to say something to Arlene. Yes. Many of you know Arlene Sampson, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago. But I want to mention what she also did. She had started and worked under Irma's presidency to update the policies and procedures. And it took a long time to finish, and Pam LaFawn was in charge of that in 2019. But Arlene worked hard, had been president after me. She was our second VP, I think, anyway, she was president in 2014, 2015. She also, during her time volunteering, and she had done a lot, I don't know the official terms, but she has made our library a Family Search affiliate. And if you don't know what that means, basically, if you're on FamilySearch.org researching and you can't see a visual, you can't see the image, you can come to our library. 90% of the times you can see it. Sometimes they only hold it. You can have to be at an official Family Search or LDS spot, right? Am I saying it right, Marilyn? Yeah, Family History Center. So that's one of the great things that Arlene had done. And also, just speaking about some of the other presidents, and there are a lot of more board members. I know Melissa was on the board at one time, and people like Dorothy Sprague. I think I came when she was president for 3 or 4 years because someone had stepped down. She was tremendous. Carla Bartel is no longer with us. I don't know about Dorothy. We haven't found her. Up in Oregon. Oregon or Washington State, I think, right? Do you know, Liz? Oh, no. Oh, okay. I didn't hear that. Okay. Yeah, she was a great lady. But Sue Firth thought it was the other way. But so a lot of really good volunteers. Sorry. We can tend to gap.
I know. I just wanted, I don't want to leave Ethel out, so she's been listening, and I want to know if Ethel wants to add anything.
Well, I'm just glad that there's so many people here and that the library is still going strong. I haven't been able to, I don't have a car anymore, so I don't get down to the library. But I'm glad to see that you're having the crowd that you have and that things are going well. And I was president in 1998.
And Ethel, I think you also worked in our obituary committee, too.
Yeah, I was one that started it.
You were the one that started it, and you worked on it for you.
The reason I started it was we were getting requests for people who had died, and we didn't know anything about them. And so we'd have to go through newspapers, and it's quite a difficult time to try to find them sometimes in the newspaper.
Okay. We have about 2 minutes for any questions from the floor, since you didn't like the yellow sheets. Anything else? Anything else from the former presidents? Lou? Okay.
I kind of wanted to just give you a really brief update on the whole idea and process of digitizing in our library. when I came on board, like I said, I went to different committees and sat on them, just listened. You can come to any committee. And CEC, and Rich Sporsky was there. Liz wasn't on the committee, but she was a part of it. And he said, we're going to teach you guys how to do digitizing, because we're going to start with that cabinet right there. It was every old book in the world that the Family History Library in Salt Lake City sent our way, because they didn't want them, because they had them digitized. But we didn't know that. So he set up a camera on a big board with a big light, and Liz and I don't know how, we started taking pictures, page by page. She'd turn the page, I'd take the picture, so that could be in our webpage. You know, we have books that are digitized, yippee. And finally, after we did about 8 books, and they were damaged books, you had to wear gloves, I looked at Liz and I said, Liz, do you think any of these books have been digitized by anybody else? And she says, I don't know. So I looked at Rich, do you think these books have ever been digitized by anybody else? I mean, we're the only ones. And he said, well, we got them from Family History Library. And I said, well, excuse me, I'm going to go home and I'm going to look up ebooks and Google Books and all that. And if they're somewhere else, why are we doing this? You know, and I found them. They were the same books. We had the damaged books. They looked pretty in a glass cabinet. Nobody could touch them. But we had started when Liz and I started taking pictures, and then it evolved from there. And then Rich said, hey, I can get you set up with digitizing computers and scanners and all this other stuff. So it evolved. Liz and I, we looked around, we got some volunteers to come on and help us to start digitizing the periodicals. We didn't do it because we wanted to. We did it because we were directed by the board to do it. And we started in the periodical room with A. And we went through a couple volunteers. They came, they left, they didn't like it. And we met twice a week. And then we got Krista Minogue and Sandy Enke on board. And I don't know how many years and how many periodicals they have digitized since that point in time, because Liz went away and I went away. And we turned it over to those 2 ladies. And I'm telling you, we saved space in the library. We're looking for more space. I mean, we needed a new building at one point. We were searching. And just for digitizing.
There are more than 52,000 issues
Digitized for you guys to look at. 52,000 periodicals and/or booklets. And they're still working. They went all through the international, they went all through every state. You know, it was fun for a while. I'd sit there and I'd get engrossed and read something that happened in Oregon, you know. But still, 52,000 publications that cleared off space in the shelves for all these new books that Irma was ripping her hair out over. It's just little things that started very small and evolved, and it's amazing what you can do with volunteer help. Thank you.
Okay, I think we will, Irma has one more thing before we wind it up. But let me say, next month we don't have a panel of very quiet, reticent former presidents. Next month we have Kim Harrison, who is one of our members, and she is going to... Listen, she's in my study group. No. She calls herself the problem child. She's going to be talking about railroads. She's a very good presenter. She's presented at state conferences. I know she does at the Ohio Genealogical Conference and some others. And Irma insists she's got more to say, and then we will wind it up.
I just want to encourage anybody here that has the least bit of interest in serving on the board to volunteer. Each of us had a different gift when we went on the board, and we had a different problem that had to be solved, and it seemed like we were at the right place at the right time to do that. And it's really rewarding to serve. It's a lot of fun, it's a lot of work, you make a lot of friendships, but I would really encourage anybody, and don't think that, oh, I don't have anything to offer, because you do. If you're a warm body and you got a mouth and you can talk, you can be on the board. So talk to any of us, or talk to Lois, anybody. If you think you want to be an aide is fun. You get to find out who else is a member of the society. So don't be bashful, just come and join us.
Okay, so we'll see you next month at the meeting, I guess. But Lois has something to say.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I learned more about this society than I'd ever thought I would know. A few announcements and then we'll go right on. I have written down here 3 times, we need aids. If you want to volunteer and learn something really valuable and yet give your time, Chris, where are you? Chris is dying to have aids. Give her a visit before you go. And we have a raffle to give away some tickets, I believe. Who's in charge of the raffle back there? Here we are. Okay. So dig out your tickets, and here we go. How many of these do I need? 8. The first number is 9923896. The next number is 9923917. 9923917. Got it? Let's mix them up. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm shorter. You're short. The next number, 9923961. Oh. Okay. The next number, 9923910.
Did she go up to the tables? Did you go?
Okay. The next number, 9923934. The next number, 9923928. 2 more.
Wait. 2 more, okay.
9923906.
You have 1 left, right? Yep.
And here's the lucky last number, 992.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
9923958.
58. Who has 58? Yes. You win again? Okay.
Lucky.
Lucky.
Reminder, get your tickets for the dinner on the 29th. Ooh, we got one more raffle. One more. It's your red ticket. 5443584. It's over there. Don't forget, if you've got any pocket change, the piggies are still hungry. We will see you next November. There they are. I don't